Most people believe manipulation is about slick words and clever persuasion. They imagine it's the silver tongue that bends others to their will. But that's only the surface. The real mechanics of manipulation don't rely on what's said out loud. They rely on the frame of reality itself. The words are just decoration. The real prison is invisible. From the moment you were born, you've been taught to obey rules you never questioned. Rules about what's polite, what's safe, what's right. You've been programmed to follow invisible lines drawn by others, teachers, bosses, parents, leaders, without ever asking who benefits from your obedience. You think you're free because the chains aren't on your wrists. But the most powerful chains are the ones you can't see, the ones wrapped around your perception of what's possible, what's allowed, and what's forbidden. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. His reputation has been reduced to a caricature of cruelty, as if he were just another advocate for cold-blooded rulers. That's a convenient lie told by people who never actually read him. Machiavelli wasn't glorifying cruelty. He was exposing reality. He saw the invisible chains, the assumptions, the mental traps that keep people obedient. And his message was simple. Once you see the chains, you can break them. But most never see. They live and die inside someone else's game, mistaking obedience for virtue, mistaking naivety for kindness, mistaking weakness for morality. What I'm about to show you isn't about turning you into a manipulator. It's about giving you immunity. Immunity from the games people play on you every single day. Because once you understand the psychology of control, you stop being a victim of it. Here's the first brutal truth. Manipulators rarely force you to do anything. They don't have to. Instead, they sit back and let you tie the noose yourself. How? Through assumptions. Think about the things you tell yourself without proof. They must have good intentions. They wouldn't lie to me. They'll appreciate what I've done. Those aren't facts. They're assumptions. And every assumption you grant without evidence is a weapon placed directly into someone else's hand. You end up disarming yourself before the fight even begins. A skilled manipulator thrives on this. They don't need to overpower you. They simply let your own belief in fairness, trust, or decency work against you. You assume too much, and in that assumption, you give them control. And because you're convinced that your assumptions are noble, you never see the trap until it's too late. Immunity begins with skepticism. It begins the moment you stop giving assumptions away like free candy and start demanding proof. This doesn't mean paranoia. It means clarity. If someone says they'll act in your best interest, ask yourself, have they earned that belief? Or am I giving it away because I want the world to be kind? When someone flatters you, do you take it at face value? Or do you examine what they gain from saying it? The tyranny of assumptions is that they make you predictable. They make you easy to exploit. Break that chain, and suddenly manipulators lose their grip. Because without your blind trust, their tricks collapse into thin air. Most people are terrified of silence. They rush to fill every gap with words, as if quiet itself were a crime. They explain too much, defend themselves too quickly, laugh nervously to ease tension. And in that endless stream of words, they hand over their secrets. They don't realize every sentence is ammunition for someone else to load against them. The manipulator doesn't need to interrogate you if you're already volunteering the information. They just sit still, ask small questions, and let you bury yourself under your own explanations. Silence makes the average person uncomfortable, but for the manipulator, it's a goldmine. Every unnecessary detail you give them is leverage. Every confession you make to fill the gap is a thread they can pull later. But silence works both ways. When you stop feeding the fire, the room changes. Silence creates gravity. It makes people lean toward you, searching for cues, desperate to know what you're thinking. When you withhold your words, your presence becomes heavier, more deliberate. Even the simplest phrase, delivered after silence, lands like a hammer. This is why those who control silence control the room. They don't scramble to explain themselves. They don't react to every jab. They sit, they observe, and they choose their words like weapons, not like chatter. A manipulator thrives when you overshare. They grow nervous when you don't, because silence robs them of the one thing they need most: leverage. Imagine this. Someone throws a sarcastic remark at you, expecting a quick reaction. Instead of defending yourself, you just look at them and say nothing. A few seconds pass. The silence grows heavier. Now they're the one feeling exposed. They wonder if they've gone too far. They scramble to justify what they just said. Without raising your voice, without a single counterattack, you've turned the power dynamic upside down. Master silence, and suddenly your presence speaks louder than any argument. Your restraint makes others cautious, because they can't read what you're holding back. And in a world addicted to noise, the one who embraces silence becomes untouchable. Attention isn't free. It's currency. And manipulators are masters at stealing it. They provoke you, insult you, bait you, anything to make you react. Because the moment you react, they own you. They've forced you onto their stage, playing a role in their script, spending your most valuable resource without realizing it. Think about how many times you've explained yourself to someone who had no intention of listening. Think about how many arguments you've had that went nowhere because the other person didn't care about truth. They just wanted your attention. That's how they win. Not by being right, but by making you spend your focus where it doesn't belong. Once you start seeing attention as currency, everything changes. You realize most people are bankrupt because they throw their attention everywhere, arguing online, defending themselves against petty critics, reacting to every provocation. Meanwhile, those who guard their attention build power. They only invest it in places where it multiplies their position. They don't explain themselves to people who can't affect their life. They don't argue with those beneath their level. They treat attention like gold and refuse to waste it on distractions. The immune mindset is simple: starve the parasites. If someone tries to bait you into giving them energy, you deny them. You don't explain, you don't defend, you don't engage. Your silence and lack of reaction force them into irrelevance. And when you do decide to invest your attention, it hits like a spotlight. People crave it because it's rare. Manipulators can only thrive on those who treat attention as disposable. But once you see it for what it is, a currency that builds or destroys your position, you stop being their victim. You stop being reactive, and you start deciding where your focus goes. Like a king choosing who deserves an audience. Every act of control depends on one thing: prediction. People can only manipulate what they can anticipate. If they know your reactions, if they know the words that push your buttons, if they can script your emotions before you even feel them, then you're already a puppet. Predictability is the leash that keeps you tied down. Look at your own life. How many times have people said, "I knew you'd react that way"? Think about how many times you've exploded in anger, and instead of intimidating someone, you gave them exactly what they wanted. Think about how many times someone made a small insult and you rushed to defend yourself, only to confirm their power over you. That's the curse of predictability. It makes you manageable. Immunity begins the moment you become unreadable. When people can't map your reactions, their strategies collapse. The insults no longer trigger the expected defense. The bait no longer pulls you into an argument. The manipulation no longer finds purchase, because you refuse to play your assigned role. Unpredictability creates fear, because it forces others into uncertainty. And uncertainty is the enemy of control. This doesn't mean acting like a lunatic, making random choices for no reason. True unpredictability is strategic. It means your behavior can't be reduced to a script. Sometimes you confront disrespect immediately. Sometimes you ignore it completely. Sometimes you respond with humor, sometimes with ice-cold silence. The point isn't chaos. The point is control. You decide your response, not them. And here's the deeper truth. Unpredictability builds mystique. People fear what they can't anticipate. They respect what they can't decode. The less predictable you are, the harder it is for anyone to categorize you as weak, submissive, or exploitable. They start treating you with caution, because they don't know if the next move will be a smile or a strike. When your enemies can't predict your steps, they can't trap you. When your rivals can't read your reactions, they can't outmaneuver you. When no one can predict your next move, manipulation collapses before it even begins. Words fade. Actions fade. But reputation echoes long after you leave the room. And Machiavelli understood that power rests less on who you are and more on what people believe you are capable of. Reputation is the invisible armor that protects you before a fight even starts. It makes people hesitate before crossing you, calculating the risk in their heads. It's why some people walk into a room and command instant respect without saying a word, because their reputation got there before they did. And it's why others, no matter how competent, are dismissed and ignored, because their reputation never earned its weight. A strong reputation isn't built on trying to please everyone. It's built on consistently projecting strength, competence, and boundaries. If people believe you can't be pushed around, most won't even try. If people believe you respond decisively to disrespect, the tests stop before they start. Reputation is psychological warfare without lifting a finger. The mistake most people make is begging for a good image. They try to be liked, try to be seen as nice, try to convince others of their worth. That's not reputation. That's desperation. True reputation is crafted. It's intentional. You decide what you want people to believe about you, and then you reinforce it through action, not through pleading. And once that reputation is established, it works for you endlessly. Even in rooms you've never entered, people are making decisions based on the story of who they think you are. That story protects you. That story gives you leverage. That story makes enemies hesitate and allies seek your approval. Machiavelli's brilliance was in seeing that power doesn't just come from what you do. It comes from what others expect you might do. Build a reputation strong enough, and half the battles you'd otherwise have to fight will never even reach you. Manipulators don't usually strike openly. They probe. They test. They send out small jabs to measure your defenses. A joke at your expense. A subtle dig disguised as advice. A question that pushes a little too deep. Most people fail these tests without even knowing they were tested. They laugh along with the joke, ignore the disrespect, or overshare in response to the probing question. And in doing so, they send a silent message. I am safe to exploit. Here's the reality. Every test is a doorway. Fail it, and you've invited manipulation in. Pass it, and you slam the door shut. Flip it, and you turn the test into a weapon against the one who tried it. Because tests don't just reveal you, they reveal the tester. Imagine someone throws a harmless joke at you in front of others. The average person laughs nervously, hoping to smooth things over. But the immune don't play that game. They either let the silence hang heavy, forcing the joker to squirm, or they strike back with precision, exposing the disrespect for what it is. Suddenly, the one running the test is the one who looks small. They're the one on defense. Or picture someone fishing for personal details under the guise of friendly curiosity. The predictable response is to spill everything, to prove trust. But the immune mindset flips the script. You answer vaguely or redirect with a question of your own. They wanted to map you, but now you are mapping them. You expose their intent, and in doing so, you seize control of the interaction. Every test is an attempt to place you beneath someone's thumb. But once you stop ignoring them, once you stop failing them, they become opportunities. opportunities to establish boundaries, to expose manipulators, to send the message that testing you comes with consequences. And here's the thing. Once people realize their tests backfire, they stop running them. They move on to easier prey. The immune don't just pass tests. They weaponize them. They make the tester regret even trying. And in that moment, manipulation flips into self-destruction. This is the deepest chain of all. The one most people never break. The hunger for approval. The desperate need to be liked, accepted, validated. It's the root of almost every form of manipulation. Because approval is the bait that keeps people running in circles. Manipulators understand this perfectly. They dangle acceptance like a prize. They give you just enough recognition to keep you hooked, then withhold it to keep you chasing. And like addicts, most people fall into the trap, sacrificing their time, their boundaries, even their dignity, just to get that little hit of validation. But the moment you stop needing approval, everything changes. You become unbaitable. No compliment can seduce you. No withdrawal of affection can control you. You aren't cold. You're independent. And independence is terrifying to manipulators because it makes you immune to their favorite weapon. Think about how many decisions in your life have been driven not by what you wanted, but by what you thought others would approve of. The job you took to look respectable. The silence you kept so you wouldn't upset anyone. The favors you did because you didn't want to disappoint. That's not freedom. That's enslavement dressed as kindness. The immune don't play that game. They measure their actions against their own values, not against the shifting winds of other people's opinions. They don't beg for approval because they understand that approval given too easily is worthless anyway. And when they do receive respect, it means something, because it was never demanded. Breaking free from the need for validation doesn't make you heartless. It makes you sovereign. You can still connect, still inspire, still lead. But you do it from choice, not from desperation. And once that chain is broken, no one can lure you into their trap again. Manipulation thrives in the shadows. It thrives on blindness, on assumptions, on predictability, on the invisible chains that bind your thoughts. But once you see the mechanics, the game falls apart. You stop being a piece on someone else's board and start stepping outside the game entirely. When you master silence, when you guard your attention, when you break predictability, when you craft your reputation, when you flip every test, when you detach from approval, you reach a state most people never touch. A state Machiavelli understood centuries ago. A state of sovereignty of mind. Now here's what I want you to do. If you're ready to break those chains, I want you to declare it out loud in the comments. Write this: I refuse to be manipulated. That's not just a phrase. That's your first act of sovereignty. That's you drawing a line in the sand between the old version of you, the one who lived blind, and the new version, the one who sees with clarity. Machiavelli's gift wasn't cynicism. It was X-ray vision. He showed us the inner workings of power, not to corrupt us, but to liberate us from being its victims. And once you see with that vision, you can never go back. You don't resist manipulation. You erase its power over you entirely.